Okay, so you want your own luxury car rental company. Buy a Lamborghini, buy a Ferrari, post it online, and watch strangers pay you $2,000 a day to drive it. That's the pitch. And the demand is real. People genuinely will pay that. But here's the strange part. Most people who try this end up owning a car that's worth less every single month, sitting in a garage they're still paying rent on, waiting for a booking that isn't coming. The operators who actually get rich aren't the ones with the flashiest fleet. They're the ones who figured out that a supercar loses more value sitting in a spreadsheet than it does sitting in a driveway. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what it costs to get into this business, how the revenue model actually works, the hidden costs that quietly wreck the math, real operators who built real fleets with real numbers, the one mistake that keeps wiping people out, and what the actual profit looks like in two concrete scenarios. So what does it actually cost to get in a luxury car rental? The real cost. Let's start with one car. A Lamborghini Huracan, a decent mid-tier exotic, priced around $220,000 used. You're not walking in with cash for most of these. Exotic car loans typically want 20 to 30% down. So that's $45,000 to $65,000 out of pocket just to take delivery. Then you need commercial insurance, because a personal auto policy will flat out deny a claim if the car was being rented out. Specialty coverage for a car in this price range runs $10,000 to $30,000 a year, and that's before you've collected a single dollar. Add a paid parking or storage spot if you don't have a garage, call it $150 to $300 a month. And you need a cash cushion because exotic cars break, and when they break expensive. Assume another $10,000 minimum sitting in reserve. So your all-in entry cost for one car before a single rental is somewhere between $65,000 and $105,000 in cash. Now, if you want a company and not a hobby, you need more than one car. Most operators who treat this seriously start with 3 to 5 vehicles, because a single car with a bad month means zero income that month. At 5 cars averaging $150,000 each, a realistic mix of Lamborghinis, a Ferrari, maybe a Rolls-Royce, you're looking at $750,000 in fleet value and somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000 in cash actually deployed once you account for financing. Some operators go leaner. They lease instead of buy, which lowers the upfront hit but caps how much equity they ever build in the cars. Others start on peer-to-peer platforms like Turo with 1 or 2 vehicles, essentially renting out their own personal supercar to strangers to offset the payment before deciding whether to scale into a real fleet. It works, but it's not passive and it's not cheap no matter which door you walk through. How the money flows. Okay, so how does the money actually flow? Here's the model in one line. You collect the daily rental rate. You pay financing, insurance, depreciation, and maintenance, and the difference is your profit. That sounds simple. The problem is that depreciation on an exotic car is not a rounding error. It is often the single biggest expense in the whole business, and most first-time owners don't even put it in their spreadsheet. Take that Huracan. A solid daily rate in a market like Miami or Los Angeles is around $1,500. Rent it out 15 days a month, which is a realistic, not optimistic, utilization rate for a single car, and that's $22,500 a month or $270,000 a year in gross rental income. Sounds incredible. Now subtract financing. A $165,000 loan at a typical exotic auto rate of 9 to 11% runs about $3,400 a month, so $40,800 a year. You have $229,200 left. Now subtract insurance, $20,000 a year on the high end for a car like this. You have $209,200. Now subtract maintenance. Exotic cars are not like a Honda. A single service interval on a Lamborghini can run $2,000 to $4,000, and that's before anything actually breaks. Budget $15,000 to $25,000 a year. You have somewhere around $185,000. And now the number that changes everything: depreciation. A rented exotic car doesn't lose value at the normal rate because rental miles pile up 2 to 3 times faster than personal miles, and buyers of used exotics pay close attention to mileage. Industry estimates put accelerated depreciation on a heavily rented supercar at $30,000 to $50,000 a year in the first few years alone. Subtract that, and your true annual profit on paper drops to somewhere between $135,000 and $155,000 on a car that grossed $270,000. That's still a strong number. But notice what happened. More than 40% of the gross revenue vanished into costs most beginners never modeled, and depreciation alone ate more than either the loan payment or the insurance. Hidden costs. And what are the costs nobody warns you about? The ones that actually derail people aren't the obvious ones. They're the ones that show up after you're already committed. Damage claims are the big one. Renters who've never driven 600 horsepower before scrape curbs, misjudge width, and occasionally total the thing. Most rental platforms and rental companies require a security deposit, typically $5,000 to $20,000 depending on the car, but that deposit rarely covers a real accident. A bent wheel and a cracked bumper on a Lamborghini can run $8,000 to $15,000 in bodywork alone. A serious collision can total the car's resale value even after repairs, because a supercar with an accident history sells for dramatically less, sometimes 20 to 30% less, even with a flawless repair. Then there's the mileage trap. Most rental agreements cap daily mileage at 100 to 200 miles, with overage fees of $3 to $8 per mile, specifically because every extra mile accelerates depreciation and wear on parts that cost more to replace than almost any normal car. If you don't enforce that cap ruthlessly, you're quietly financing your own car's decline. Downtime is another one nobody budgets for. A car in the shop isn't a car earning money, and exotic parts often have to be shipped from overseas, meaning a repair that would take 3 days on a Toyota can take 3 to 6 weeks on a Lamborghini. That's 6 weeks of zero revenue on an asset you're still making loan payments on. There's also the financing trap that's cost some hosts their entire vehicle. If you finance a car under a personal auto loan and then list it commercially, you may be violating the loan agreement outright. And lenders have repossessed vehicles mid-rental, sometimes while a paying guest was still driving it, even when every payment was made on time. And finally, platform and demand risk. If you're renting through a marketplace, that platform can change its commission structure, its insurance terms, or its rules with very little notice, and your entire revenue model shifts overnight. A slow month in a seasonal market like Miami in the off-season, or a city-wide event getting canceled, can turn a profitable car into a parked liability for weeks at a time. Who's doing it? So who's actually built this into a real business? Let's talk about a few real examples at different scales. Steven Alvarez, a New Jersey native, started renting out his own car on a peer-to-peer platform in 2020 as a side hustle. He reinvested every dollar of profit back into more cars instead of taking it out. By his mid-20s, he had scaled to a fleet of 120 vehicles and hired 6 people to help manage it, and reportedly pulled in nearly $2 million in a single year. His model wasn't exotic supercars exclusively. It leaned on higher volume, in-demand vehicles like SUVs and popular models that book consistently, not just the cars with the biggest wow factor, because a fleet needs utilization, not just Instagram appeal. Now let's look at a smaller operator built more around the passion side of the business. A well-known Las Vegas-based host built a personal fleet of about a dozen vehicles, mixing everyday luxury cars with genuine exotics like an Aston Martin Vantage. He treated the cars like his own, servicing them exclusively at the dealership, hand-washing them himself, and picking vehicles based on what he'd actually want to drive, not just what would rent fastest. His fleet earned him strong side income without ever becoming a full-time operation with staff and overhead. The common thread between the two: neither one bought the flashiest car first and figured out the business later. The high-volume operator built for utilization and scale. The passion operator built for lower overhead and personal enjoyment. Both ran the numbers before they ran the fleet. How people lose. And then there's the failure story, because this one is important. So how do people actually lose their shirt on this? The most common failure pattern in luxury car rental isn't a single bad renter or one bad accident. It's buying during a demand spike and assuming that demand is permanent. In 2021, rental car shortages nationwide sent daily rates through the roof, and peer-to-peer hosts had their best year in the industry's history, sold out constantly, at premium prices. A wave of new operators looked at those numbers, financed exotic cars at the top of the market, and built their entire business plan around 2021 level bookings. Then 2022 happened. Rental supply came back, rates corrected down to normal, and bookings dropped to pre-shortage levels. Hosts who had financed cars assuming they'd stay booked 20-plus days a month suddenly found themselves at 10 to 12 days a month, with the same loan payment and the same insurance bill. Some sold off their fleets at a loss just to stop the bleeding. A competing peer-to-peer platform, GetAround, which had gone public just 2 years earlier, shut down its entire U.S. operation in the same window, wiping out hosts who'd built their business exclusively around that one platform. The investors who survived both the 2022 correction and the platform shutdown had one thing in common. They never modeled their business around the best month they'd ever had. The simple rule: never buy a car that only makes sense if it's booked 20-plus days every single month. Utilization is the business. A great month is a bonus. The real profit. Okay, so what can you actually walk away with? Let's run 2 real scenarios with actual math. Scenario 1, the small operator. You buy a single, well-chosen exotic, a Lamborghini Huracan, for $220,000, putting down $55,000 and financing the rest. You rent it through a peer-to-peer platform at $1,400 a day, averaging 14 rental days a month, a realistic number for one car in a strong market. That's $19,600 a month, or $235,200 a year in gross revenue. Annual financing costs around $39,600. Insurance runs $18,000. Maintenance and detailing run $18,000. Platform fees, typically 15 to 25% of revenue, depending on your protection plan, take another $47,000. Accelerated depreciation, conservatively, costs you $35,000 a year in lost resale value. Add those up, $39,600 plus $18,000 plus $18,000 plus $47,000 plus $35,000. That's $157,600 in total annual costs. Your actual profit, $235,200 minus $157,600. That's $77,600 a year on a car you put $55,000 down on. That's a strong first-year return, roughly 141% on your cash invested, though notice most of your gross revenue, nearly 2/3 of it, went to costs most beginners never model at all. Scenario 2, the serious operator. You start with one car, reinvest every dollar of profit instead of taking it as income, and scale over 5 years to a fleet of 10 vehicles, a mix of exotics and high-demand luxury SUVs, the kind that book consistently instead of sitting pretty. Total fleet value, $1.8 million. Cash actually invested over 5 years, including reinvested profit, around $500,000. Average daily rate across the mixed fleet, $650, blending high-ticket supercars with steadier, higher utilization luxury SUVs. Average utilization, 16 days a month across the fleet, which is achievable at this scale because a diversified fleet smooths out the slow weeks any single car would have. Total gross revenue, $650 times 16 days times 10 cars times 12 months. That's $1,248,000 a year. At this scale, you're running it as a real operation. You hire a fleet manager and support staff, budget around $120,000 a year in payroll. Insurance across the fleet runs $150,000. Maintenance and detailing, $130,000. Financing across a blended portfolio, roughly $280,000 a year. Depreciation, conservatively, $220,000 a year across 10 vehicles. Total costs, $900,000. Annual profit, $348,000 a year on $500,000 invested over 5 years. That's real income, and unlike Scenario 1, it's diversified enough that one bad month on one car doesn't sink the business. This is also the point where operators start buying newer, in-demand models specifically because they retain value and rent consistently, rather than chasing the most exotic badge on the lot. Because at scale, an underutilized halo car is a worse investment than a fully booked, boring luxury SUV. The bigger picture. Let's also talk about the arc of this industry, because the math looks very different depending on when you got in. From 2015 to 2021, peer-to-peer car sharing platforms grew explosively, and early operators who got in before the market got crowded had their pick of markets with little competition and rising demand. Then 2021 happened, the shortage year, the best year the industry had ever seen, and it pulled in a wave of new operators chasing numbers that weren't sustainable. 2022 corrected hard. The operators who survived were the ones who'd built their model around a normal month, not a record one, and who diversified their fleet instead of betting everything on one exotic halo car. The lesson isn't that this business stopped working. It's that it only works when you treat depreciation as a real, immediate cost, not a someday problem, and when you build your pricing around realistic utilization, not your best week ever. The whole model in one sentence. You are renting out a rapidly depreciating asset to strangers who've never driven anything like it before, and the business only works if your revenue outpaces that depreciation by enough to also cover everything else. So, here's the real answer. Can you build a real luxury car rental company? Yes, absolutely, and people are doing it right now, some of them making real money. But the path looks like this. Years of reinvesting profit instead of pocketing it, surviving at least one slow season or one expensive accident, and staying disciplined about utilization and depreciation when everyone around you is buying the flashiest car they can finance. They're learning the business on a small scale before it costs them a fortune to learn it the hard way. The 10-car operator is running an actual company with real staff, real diversification, and real numbers that hold up in a bad month, not just a great one. And the people you see online who look like they built this overnight almost always started years before the market got crowded, learned the expensive lessons early, and reinvested every dollar instead of spending it on the very cars they were renting out. That doesn't mean you can't do it now. It means you have to run the numbers before you buy the car, not after. Because the dream isn't wrong. Renting exotic cars for a living is real. It just has a depreciation schedule most people never read before they sign.